Would you believe that yesterday was one of the most memorable days of my life? Would you believe it was both sad and happy? Well, it was, and I'll explain in a moment on the monologue.
Great fences make good neighbors, all while providing safety, security, and privacy for you, your family, and your fur family. Backyard Works is your local fence, deck, and handrail experts, owned and operated right here in Sussex County. All materials are top quality and made in the USA. Backyard Works knows that home is where the heart is. Visit online to view stunning projects at backyardworks.net or call today for customer service that's unmatched. 302-703-9888.
The monologue is entitled Goodness of the Old America. I was not looking forward to yesterday because of Adam Schiff's clown show. You cannot sugarcoat the fact that this was a sad day in this nation's history. This phony impeachment is bad enough for this nation, but the realization that one party has gone rogue is just too much for many of us to stomach. Their goal to maintain a corrupt Washington establishment, the swampy deep state, because as you know, they are the ones who have really been calling the shots for a long time, not you and me, the way it was structured by the framers. The Socialist Democrats are controlled by this deep state and their gangster-like mentality, which I outlined in last week's monologue. What I saw with my own eyes and heard with my own ears and processed with my God-given brain rattled me to the very core. It really did. My neck is actually sore because I spent so much of yesterday afternoon shaking my head in disgust. What was on display not only for the country, but before the entire world and before the eyes of our enemies was the new America that I discussed in Tuesday's monologue. Our enemies have nothing to fear from the new America, and they know it. At a weaker, divided nation it is, to be sure. The new America shows an evil side of this nation, a side of self-centered, power-hungry socialists who lack simple respect for anyone and anything. Their country, the rule of law, and yes, their fellow Americans of which they disagree with socially and politically are all fair game. Yesterday was not so much the new and old Americas at war with one another, but for the sharp contrasts in Americans of the old and new America that I observed yesterday. New Americans like Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell stopping at nothing to destroy a president and ensure that older America will never attempt to elect a president who is not part of the deep state, not approved, and certainly not vetted by the deep state ever again. Who are these new Americans, you say? What constitutes a new American? These new Americans place power and their own personal interests ahead of the country and ahead of anything else. These new Americans who consider organized religion a cult, who consider God the enemy and place the value of human life on the same level as your kitchen trash. The new American who threatens those for whom they disagree, uses any means necessary to ruin their lives and destroy their families, all because they value the old America. You new Americans who consider the Constitution a useless hindrance, our history embarrassing, and our society racist. The new American who works behind the scenes to prevent a small local Catholic parish and their parishioners from exercising their constitutional rights to freedom of religion and use taxpayer-funded public spaces as a weapon. The new American claims that this nation protects those who do not believe in God from any public contact with religion because they will be offended. Climate change and a socialist-run government are their religion, and they're not at all ashamed to admit it publicly. The new American who picks and chooses who has free speech and who must shut up. The new American who picks winners and losers. The new American who corrupts our children's minds to ensure they will follow in their atheist socialist footsteps. The new Americans who conduct themselves like gangsters running an organized crime syndicate. That is the description of the new American and the robots who support them. Selfish, corrupt, and without conscience. Their true purpose can no longer be hidden. It is out there for all the world to see. You and I, we serve Almighty God and the old America governed by the United States Constitution. You're probably thinking at this point, Jake, all we're hearing is about how bad yesterday was. What was it about yesterday that made it so special? What made it so special was that I learned that there are still so many traditional, patriotic, old Americans who still love their country, who still place Almighty God, country, and family first and foremost in their lives. Their community is important to them, and they give of themselves whenever and wherever their community calls. They don't wait for the government to act. Their community is not the government's responsibility. It's their responsibility. Yesterday, being Wednesday, was my Out and About show, which is produced for the benefit of our community. It is WGMD's and our advertisers' way of giving back to this generous and very kind community. The show itself is not easy to put together, believe me, but I do believe that my Out and About show makes a difference in the lives of many Delmarva residents, including our veterans. Yesterday's show is one show that I will always remember. I am so proud of you all for making it happen. All I did was put together the segments with the help of my lovely wife, Nancy, and you, Delmarva, took care of the rest. Last year at this time, I invited Teresa Townsend from our local Wreaths Across America chapter in Millsboro to join me on Out and About. I must admit to you that I knew nothing of the organization last year. Wreaths Across America places wreaths on the graves of our veterans and deceased service members all over the world from a factory in Maine. The wreaths are shipped to local chapters who, with the assistance of volunteers, place those wreaths on the graves in mid-December. And they don't just place the wreath, they read and announce the soldier's name and then place the wreath in his or her memory. Incredible. Last year, Teresa was going to come up short with the needed wreaths at the Millsboro Cemetery, but with your help, your sponsorships made a huge difference. You made a big difference for our veterans and service members laid to rest in the Millsboro Veterans Cemetery. My wife Nancy paid a visit to Wreaths Across America headquarters in Maine earlier this month. From that visit, I learned more about the organization than I could have ever hoped to learn, and Nancy began the process of planning this year's Wreaths Across America segment for me by talking with the management and staff in Maine, inviting them to come on my show and talk about their worldwide mission to decorate every American service member's grave with a wreath for the Christmas holiday. Yesterday, that segment happened. Karen Worcester, Executive Director of Wreaths Across America, joined us by telephone to tell us about their incredible journey to honor all our veterans wherever they may be buried. Teresa Townsend, our local Millsboro coordinator, was there joining the conversation. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, but the most incredible thing happened. In that hour, during the segment, you came, many of you came and wrote checks. Teresa collected over $1,000 in less than 1 hour from our listeners. Over $1,000. One listener heard the segment and asked his boss to sponsor. Not only did his boss sponsor a number of wreaths, his employee, the listener, wrote his own check matching his boss's amount. And there was listener Butch, who wrote out a large check himself, and he volunteered to lay wreaths on the 14th of December. But perhaps the saddest moment was from a listener who came with her check in hand to sponsor a wreath. The wreath she wanted to sponsor was her late husband's. He is buried at the Millsboro Veterans Cemetery. How difficult that must have been for her. These listeners heard me discuss the segment and came down to Southern States and Milford to make a difference. And what a difference they made. Whether it is Wreaths Across America or the Lewis Meineke Veterans Free Oil Change event, the old America, populated by old Americans, still exists. It certainly exists on the Delmarva Peninsula. It was quite a week to witness and experience for me, a week of giving, sacrifice, and love exhibited by this community. I was sort of bummed out this week, but thanks to the old America, the one that I love and cherish, I am feeling very much different about things today. We must find ways of conveying the goodness of the old America to our children and grandchildren, and the sharp contrasts in the old and new America. The old is based on giving, the new is based on taking. There is still plenty of goodness in the old America. That goodness comes from above. Let us all commit this morning to passing it on. The goodness of the old America will and must defeat the selfishness and self-centeredness of the new America, because that is not America at all. And that's the monologue. What say you? The monologue was sponsored locally by Backyard Works, your premier fence, deck, and handrail source. Owned and operated here in Sussex County. Visit them online to view stunning projects at backyardworks.net and give the local experts a call for your free quote today. 302-703-98